Welcome to Positive Filter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career with a little self-help around the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope that what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Philip Wilkerson, a.k.a. Positive Filter, a.k.a. Ill Phil, a.k.a. Prince of Positivity, a.k.a. I got Austin, Texas on my leg, tattooed on my leg. That's another story. And I'm back with another episode of the podcast. I have a very special guest. His name is Grant Parr, like Parr in golf, and he is a mental sports performance consultant. So you know about that mindset, positivity. He's infusing that in sports. He's been doing this for a long time, and I definitely got connected with him through one of my good friends, Todd. And I went on his website and about that mental aspect, and I was like, he has to be on the podcast. So I am very fortunate to be joined by Mr. Grant Parr today. So Grant, can you introduce yourself for the listeners?
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you for having me on your show, man. I'm really excited to kind of share my thoughts, my background, but I am a mental performance coach, and I work with professional athletes, Olympians, collegiate, and high school athletes. And basically what I'm doing is I am putting in a process or a strategy for that athlete or that performer to make the best decision for their mind and body. So they're essentially aligning their thoughts and their emotions so they can actually win the now, be in the present.
I love it. What's your AKs, man? I know we chatted online. You gotta hit the listeners with your names, man.
My AKAs, AKA GP, AKA GPZ, AKA G Parr, AKA G Love, AKA
G Love,
G
okay.
Thing.
Oh my
G
goodness.
Thing. So yeah, man, I keep on going, man.
I've
had a lot of fun. Yeah.
Too many flames. I literally, I'm gonna work on next time I get the podcast. I'm learning how to do the little soundtracks. I was about to hit you with the air horns and the fire flames, all that, man. This man said G Peasy. Oh, I can't take it, yo. That's so the mental between the ears. I'm a former high school athlete. You know, I gotta go back to my Letterman days, but the between the ears, the mindset is so important in athleticism, and I think that is great that you are bringing that aspect to the world of sports, particularly for what you do. But can you take us through the journey of your athleticism? How did you come to this personal journey in your own to talk about the mindset?
Absolutely. It's I'll give you the cliff notes because it can be it was a long journey for me to kind of find myself in this point in my career. But I essentially years ago when I was younger, I was a quarterback. I played football for 13 years and played all the way up through college. And I had a career-ending injury actually my sophomore year, but I kept on playing through it. And right before my senior year, I actually decided, or I didn't, my body did, to tell me to move on from the sport. So essentially I spent almost 2 decades dealing with my issue, which was I had a hip injury. So I had 2 hip replacements on the same hip. One of them one surgery left me handicapped for about 4 years. So I had to, I lost who I was. I lost my identity. I had a hard time talking about just my career and touchdowns and records and all that stuff. Just because I didn't deal with my frustration. I didn't deal with a lot of emotional stuff. So as I got through my second injury went through my second surgery, I got my body back. I got my life back. And so when I started to really find out who I was again, I wanted to reinvent a new Grant. So I essentially did that. And when I started going through a lot of discovery, I was literally between sales calls when I was sitting in my car, I was listening to Desmond Howard.
Oh,
and
yes.
He was on ESPN talking about a sports psychologist. And I can't remember if it was his sports psychologist or somebody else's, but that was that moment where I was like, what is this? Like, what is a sports psychologist? And So then I literally that night I went home and I just started doing tons of research. And then within a few months of that night, I was enrolled at JFK University and I was on my path, for sports psychology. So I got my master's in sports psychology, and ever since then, man, that's how I got into it. And I started my company, Game Face Performance, my podcast, 90% Mental, and my book, The Next One Up Mindset. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's happened on my journey, but essentially it was my injury that allowed me to get to this point.
I love it too. And I love that you brought up the process of your own self-discovery and your own, your own struggles of who I am. Because quite honestly, like, flipping the coin, like I work in career services. I work helping students, and it was through my own discovery, like, what can I do professionally that made me a counselor in regards to professional development. So technically it was like my own doubts of what I want to do next. It's helped me become a really good career counselor, because now I know what it feels like. Like, dang, I was that kid that never went to the career counseling center in college. And then I was like stuck with, how do I become a career counselor? And so I think it's your journey too. Like, what is identity? What's in between the ears that led you to become what you're doing now? One of the things that stood out to me about your journey was that you were just so open to new opportunities. I listened to the radio and I dived in. What was some of your doubts when you started studying sports psychology for yourself?
Well, that's a great question, because I went back to school when I was 40. Mm-hmm. So when you have been out of the game, the educational game for, 17 plus years, as much as I was like really excited because I'm re-engineering who I am and I'm going on this new path, and I know that I love what I'm doing and what I'm getting into. But that first semester, I was like, I'm sitting there at 11:30 at night every night doing homework, going, what am I doing? Yes. What am I doing? And it was that negative self-talk at first, and it was just grit, man. You got to push through it. You can't let stuff stop you. And as soon as I think the key word for me was rhythm. As soon as I got into my rhythm of when I did my homework, when I did projects, when I did work, because I worked from home, when I did, be a husband, like all these things, as soon as I found my rhythm, I was like, then it was just like off to the races. I'm like, okay, like I can't wait for this to be over because I want to get into this. Yes, like, I really want to get into it. So it was just rhythm.
And it's funny too. I love this. This is the first time we even met, but I can totally feel your vibe in similar situations where when I was in my master's program, the negative self-talk, because I went from a history major to studying counseling, right? And everyone was talking about what they studied in undergrad. Mine was totally unrelated. And I was like, man, I don't belong here. I don't belong in this program. But then as I dived into the subject like you did, I found that regardless of my background, I was so interested in the subject that I did belong there because I was interested. I worked hard. You know what I'm saying? So
for sure,
one of the things you do preach is the mindset of what's between the ears to elevate athletic performance. What are some of the things when you work with an athlete? What are some of the values that you try to transfer to them to say, okay, maybe if sports doesn't work out for you, use these same athletic mindset to the real world? What are some things you do with athletes for that?
Well, it's when you think transitioning out of sport, and I don't care if it's high school, college, Olympic, professional, there's going to be a time where you're going to transition out of sport. And I think it gets a little bit more difficult. It could be and can be if you've spent years within your craft. So like an Olympian, Olympians been doing this all their lives, right? Yep. And even professional. So when you get to that point, and I work with this a lot with athletes, and I had to work with myself because my transition was horrible and I didn't deal with it right. So when you think about mental skills and the things that I teach, it's life skills. So if you can take the lessons from your sport, because I think that's the beautiful thing about sports is that you get to learn communication skills, leadership skills, discipline. You get to understand your effort and your attitude and all these things that translate into life or into the workplace. So if you can take those lessons and you can also take mental skills, these life skills. You're setting yourself up way better than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm going to stress this within my work, within mental performance. It comes down to energy and it comes down to breath. Those two things I start with first. You have to understand your energy. You have to understand how to cultivate it and how to work with what the energy you do have. And if you and certain things that you can actually do to actually enhance your energy. But then you need to get into your breath. If you want to be great, if you want greatness to actually show up, it doesn't happen in the future or in the past. It happens now. So if I can teach an athlete to understand their lessons, understand mental performance, their energy, and their breath, that will help them at least get on the right path when they're transitioning out of sport.
I love that. And you know, one of the things is, okay, I've met many athletes. You know, one of my good colleagues, I'm going to shout her out, Christy, my colleague, Christy Michaels. She actually been on the podcast multiple times. She's a D1 athlete at University of Hartford, big baller, you know what I'm saying? You know, big baller shot caller. And some of the things I say is that one of the things I noticed about her, I knew as soon as she came in for an interview, she was on it. Like she was just boom, 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 boom. You know what I'm saying? Like so goal driven. She's actually elevated me because I'm the loud, outspoken person in my office, but she's so organized. But I think the things that she had to overcompensate or try to work on is that she definitely, I've seen sometimes where she doubts her professionalism. Like, and I know it's like, yo, you are awesome. Like I look up to you and your organization skills and how you set the day. And you know, you are more than Chrissy, the D1 player. Now you are like literally one of my, like when I say colleagues, you're one of the people that inspire me. So what are some of the things that you work with to get the former athletes out of their mind to like really start to believe in themselves in the world of work?
Yeah. You know, there's a few different starting points, but the one that I like to start with a lot is actually intention, setting the intention. You know, there's so many, even with myself when I was an athlete and even when I was a corporate athlete, when I was in the workplace, there were so many times where I didn't set my intention. I just kind of showed up and I kind of hoped everything kind of worked out. And I kind of trusted that everything was going to work out and trusted my own process. But working with athletes, working with corporate athletes, it's getting them in the morning to set their intention. What is your intention for the day? Now, it's one thing to kind of set it, but what I want you to do when we're talking about breath, I want you to set your intention and I want you to connect it with your breath. So I really want you to be in the morning. I want you to breathe for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, but I want you to not only connect your intention for the day, but I want you to see it and feel it. So what does it look like? What does it feel like? And just spend a couple minutes in your car before you get out of your car, or if it's in your office when you have some time, because what's going to happen is you're training your brain to see it and feel it. Now, if you want to be more intentional, guess what? It's probably going to fade in about 3 or 4 hours. You're going to forget about your intention. You got to revisit it at lunch. And then at the end of the day, you got to reflect on it. So if you're making that a best practice, man, listen, intention equals mindset. If you want to have a mindset, then set your intention and you're gonna be a little more organized and I feel every time that I set my intention, this road is like, it just unfolds right in front of me. And that's my lane. So you ever heard the expression, stay in your lane?
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, set your intention, stay in your lane, honor it, and be about it. So do that every day. Yeah.
I love that. I love that mindset too, because I'm a big to-do list person, but I need to work on mindset and breathing. And, you know, I learn about I always joke about the foo-foo yoga and all that stuff, but now I'm really trying to work on it and practice it. Every single person I've met, regardless of athletes to not, has incorporated meditation and mindset, regardless. I definitely am. This is a reoccurring theme. If I hear this 11 times, I guess it's something, there's some kind of validity to it, you know? One of the things I also noticed for former athletes is that when I looked, and I met the athletes here at my university. I met their day is nuts. Like it's so scheduled. Like 6 o'clock this lunch practice, boom, 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 and that's like so, I guess, rigid, but it's safe, it's comforting, right? You know what you're going to expect every day. But then after sports is over with, you don't have that mealtime, boom, boom, boom. And I've noticed I even have family members that have been D1 cross-country athletes that had everything to the T. And then when they got in the real world, they're like, yo, what do I do? Like, what's my day look like? What are some things? I guess it kind of adds that intention. But how does, is that part of that is really incorporating the schedule for people that are now in the real world where it's scheduleless?
Yeah, and I see that a lot. I mean, when you're, especially when a D1 program and above, it's structure, man. It's all about structure. And then when that structure goes away, it's like, oh, how do I hold myself accountable to structure? And some people are really good at it, and some of them, and you're right. Like I've seen people go like, what do I do now? Like no one's holding me accountable. Because the whole structure has been holding them accountable. So, again, it's understanding, connecting your intention every day, connecting with it. I think it's, you got to be goal oriented. You got to understand your goals, because what happens is that when you show up to well, I don't care what it is, if it's in relationships, work, athletics, if you are performing a duty, right? You're performing anything, like even your job, my job, I don't care what it is. You can't go and just hope. Like, I love the word hope when you're down on your luck, when you don't have food, when you don't have a place to live, no transportation. I want you to hope. But if you're performing a role, I don't want you to hope. I want you to know. I don't want you to think you're going to do well, or you might do well, or what if. That language needs to get out. So I think when you're trying to build structure, you've got to understand your intention. You got to have goals, and you have to understand your own language, like self-talk. I call it champion talk. Because there's gonna be moments where you're gonna be demotivated. You're gonna be uninspired. So you need to talk to your feelings and not listen to them. As soon as you listen to your feelings and listen to your thoughts, you're in the effect of it. And I don't want you to be in the effect of anything. I want you to be empowered and in control. And then that will give you more structure, and you'll feel like you're owning your day more.
I love that. So one of the things I do also notice what I'm hearing from you is intention for the day, very present, focused. And that's good. And I totally I'm working on present, because they say, like, if you focus too much on the past, it's kind of like regret. If you focus too much on the future, it can build anxiety. So you focus on the present. But how do you balance focusing on the present, but also being in preparation for the next day ahead and whatnot? That balance between preparation, that balance between preparation and anxiety, if that makes sense. Like, you need to be prepared, but you also don't need to worry.
Right. Well, when you think about the past and when you think about the future, you have no control. Literally, you have no control. The only thing you can control is you in the moment. Now, there's a beautiful saying or quote from the Dalai Lama. It says, the 2 days you never want to live in is yesterday and tomorrow. Okay, so you make a great point about, as far as preparation, sometimes you have to kind of look in the future, right? You have to look into the future to prepare. Now, I'm going to kind of go back and forth on some of these paradigms, because sometimes for us to have growth, we have to, or if we want to have growth, we have to reflect. So I've had multiple conversations are like, Grant, if you want me to reflect, that means I have to go back into the future. I said, there's a difference. When you're reflecting, you're looking at something that you can learn from. You're not living in the moment and stuck in the past. So when you go reflect, it's a whole work on, build on process. You have to go look at something that you got to look at what went well and then what you need to improve on. So that's not living in the past. And then when you need to go look in the future to prepare. Now, there's another great saying here: your preparation is your separation. So when you're preparing for something, you're increasing your confidence, but you're separating self-doubt. You're separating yourself from your opponents. You're separating a lot of distractions when you're prepared. So when we're thinking about the future, we're not stuck in the future. We're not trying to live in the future. We're actually trying to be more visionary, if that makes sense.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
it's not an anxious thing. It's more like you got positive goals, and then you're like, what are the micro steps that I can do today? So it's not like a scary thing, like, oh, I'm worried. It's more like, you're right, like a vision, right? Like a good positive vision.
And again, it's when you're preparing too, you're being intentional. So if you think that you're getting into the future a little bit by preparing, it's just you're getting into your intention. And I think also as well, if we want to prepare for the next day or that event, we got to visualize. We've got to see it and feel it. And so that's another thing. If you want to get prepared, man, the more that you can visualize and see yourself already doing it, your body's going to be in a better position when you actually do that, whatever
I love
that thing.
Now I have a question. A lot of people talk about flow state for athletes, like they practice situations so much that when they're in the game moment, they're in the moment, they hit a flow state and they're not even worried about stuff. They're just throwing that perfect pass or that shooting that shot. How do you discuss flow state, in regards to your clients? And maybe two things: how do you discuss flow state with an athlete, and how do you discuss flow state with the whole situation we're talking about now, the post athlete or the athlete transitioning into the real world?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about flow state, or getting into the zone.
Mm-hmm.
To me, besides winning a championship, it's the most beautiful thing that you can experience as an athlete. I mean, because your mind and body and spirit and heart is blissed out and completely in trust. It's in trust mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually in my life, when I played football, I experienced being in flow a few times.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people that have competed for a long time and have never actually experienced it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, right. So when people do, it's interesting. And this happened to me last year with an athlete. This athlete experienced it, and she was like, Grant, how do I actually get into flow every game? She's like, because it feels good and it can be addicting. And what happens is athletes try to get into zone and flow. And that's where more often than not, if you try to get into it, it won't work. You're forcing it. It's a thing that it happens because if you allow yourself, if you trust yourself, and actually there's some vulnerability to it. If you're vulnerable and you're open and you're trusting, trust me, your body will react to it. But if you're trying to get into this like feeling, it's probably not going to happen. So what I do is when I teach athletes it's not about getting into zone per se. It's about positioning yourself to get into zone.
Okay.
So what are the things that we can control up until the beginning of the whistle or the tip of the ball, whatever the beginning of their performance? What can we do to control our thoughts and our emotions? So get into our breath, visualization, self-talk. If we have to tap into our joy and some certain emotions, if we have to tap into our mantras to control, it's all about getting my body controlled and relaxed. And then when the game starts or the performance starts, then just let the body go. And then if the body feels like getting in zone, it will. And then that's where magic happens. I mean, that's where, it's cool. Like to hear stories of zone, people like don't even know what happened.
Yeah, they black out.
They black out.
Yeah.
And things are fast, things are super slow, things are foggy, things are super clear, or they hear everything or they don't hear anything at all. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing, but it's in your body's in complete trust. It's trusting all the work that you put in.
And also, I mean, I've heard that's athleticism, but we've seen flow state and other things too. Obviously, right. Like someone that's a public speaker and they're like, that was a great speech. And I'm like, I really don't remember what I said, So right. how do you talk about that with the non-athlete? I love how you said they chasing it. Like, it's almost like the dragon, the heroin addict, right? They get the hit. Yeah. They need that again. So how do you work with people that are trying to chase the dragon? I'm going to call it chasing the dragon. How do you work with people trying to chase the dragon, but in normal life? Like, dang, I'm never going to get that feeling again. It's something else.
Yeah. It's really no different from teaching an athlete, but the thing is like outside of athletics, it's your energy, man. Like, I mean, listen, I've never met anybody in my entire life, whether if it's in the workplace or outside of athletics or in athletics, that's been in flow that had shitty energy. Yeah. Or that was, you know what I mean? Or low energy. And again, I'll be careful on that because you can still get into zone and have low energy. It's just you have to focus. If you're at 45% of energy and you focus everything on that 45%, you can get in flow. But more often than not, man, when your energy is rocking, like I always like do a scale of 1 to 5, 1's low, 5's high. So if your frequency is rocking, man, your light's shining through your chest, man, and everybody can feel your energy, you're more often than not setting yourself up to get in flow. So I think it's, what are we doing in the morning as far as checking our frequency? If we understand where we're at, how do we actually enhance it and cultivate it and protect our energy? There's so many things. Again, breath, meditation, self-talk, music. Music's a huge one, man. Like for me, if I feel a little funky, or even if I'm feeling great, man, and I just even want to get a little bit more of my energy boosted, man, put on some music, man, and let it rip.
Oh,
But you have
GPC.
to, yeah. So it's and also too, I think the way we talk to ourselves, and I know I mentioned this earlier, is huge. So like when I get into my flow state, when I'm speaking in front of like tons of people or in front of teams, there's a mantra that I say all the time. And I don't care if I've been working with a team all season long. I will say this every time I speak in front of people. And it's 3 things. And this allows me to get positioned for flow. And it's, I get to do this. They will want to hear me, and tap into your joy. And I say that enough times that those 3, I'm controlling the whole environment. I'm not thinking about doubt. I'm not thinking if they don't, if I screw up my words, if they don't like what I said, I'm in complete control, and I'm getting my mind and body ready for that flow state.
I love that. So this is, as I said earlier, I've heard meditation multiple times now. That's probably like the 3rd guest that's talked about vibration and the high energy, low energy. Now I'm totally starting to believe in it, energy suckers, negative energy people, whatever. So what are some ways that I love that maintenance. What are some ways you check your energy in the morning?
Well, I think, personally, this is my thought. I think we all actually either directly or indirectly check it every morning. Some people don't think they do, but you ever wake up in the morning and go, did I have a good night's sleep? Why is, my body feels a little tight? Like you're checking it. You're really every morning you're in the shower or you're eating food or you're looking, social media, you're checking your body. So I think that's the main thing, is that if we understand that the main ingredient for us to actually move through the universe, move through this world, it is our energy. It is.
Yes.
So I think that it's our responsibility, I think, to actually check the energy. Where am I at? And if I had a great night's sleep and I feel great, cool. Like, know that. I want you to know that. And if you feel a little funky, okay, cool. What are you going to do differently to actually get to the next level? Or maybe you're just sick, man. Like, and you're just, there's no way of me, going from a 3 to a 4. So I'm going to operate in 3 all day, and I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to be intentional, and I'm going to, you know what I mean? So it's just, I think just being very self-aware, like you're building self-awareness.
I love that. And so, this is a great conversation. This is just really, really inspiring me. And I think one of the best parts of your journey is that you found yourself in this spot because of where you are personally. Have you ever worked with someone you're like, this person, not say but yeah, I do this all the time. Like, this person is so me. Like 2 years, when I work with students now, I look at a student and I'm like, yo, that person's me. I'm looking at a mirror, and now I'm trying to give myself advice. I literally give myself advice to that person. Do you ever catch yourself doing that with some of your young clients?
I haven't found yet a client that like I'm like looking at myself, but there's certain things when I hear language, like I'll hear them say stuff, and I'm like, wow, that's, I used to say that. Or, when I was going through my negative journey for almost 2 decades, man, I played a small, narrow game, and I was a victim. And you got to understand, like, I was the man back in the day when I was in high school and college. I was the man, and then I became not the man for a long, long time.
Yes.
So the language of when you're playing a small game and you're being a victim, when I hear it's like that stuff stands out really like loudly when I'm actually listening to clients. So I don't see myself per se, but there's certain things that I went through that I can identify with other clients.
Right. That makes sense, because obviously I think I definitely have so much interaction when I see a young Black male such as myself, and it just I work in the community that I live in or grew up in. It's just maybe the overlaps are just so crazy close that I'm like, yo, I'm talking to some young high school kid that's like me. So then I start turn on my parent brain and stuff. Say, yo, you got to do this, this, and this, and I'm like, literally, I'm talking to the person I wish I was talking to myself. I was talking to myself. Like, man, I wish I could have just gone in a time machine and shook my own self up and told it stuff. And but the thing is, I flipped it. Instead of living in regrets, I'd be like, okay, well, I can't I can't talk to myself, but I can talk to this young person like I would talk to myself, and it kind of makes me feel good about my job. I don't know. It's kind of
Totally.
it's kind of a weird mental thing I do for myself, to kind of just get me, just to reframe the situation rather than live in regrets. I have like a clean slate with the new person I'm working with, right? So that's kind of how I flip it mentally.
Well, you're in service too. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
not to cut you off, but
Oh,
like
100%.
we service ourselves as far as like trying to take care of ourselves. And so you've gone through a lot of stuff. So when you see somebody like you, or you feel a responsibility, man, you're just being service. I'll tell you what, man, being in service to me is another like flow state feeling, right? It's just to be in service is an honor, and it's awesome, man. Like I signed up for this, and it's just, so I think what you're feeling, the frequency of being in service, man, it's just, it's a beautiful thing. It's a feeling, it's a duty. So I think it's just being in service is cool.
Yeah, and I love that. And obviously, we talk about servant leadership, also just finding purpose through service. Like literally, if you want to help and commit to helping others, then technically, the yield helps yourself, or you heal yourself. But I totally agree with that. I'm gonna ask two more questions, and then we're gonna kind of wrap this up so that we can definitely collab again. But one of my questions that really, really stood out to me was that you just said it was, I was the man, and then I'm no longer the man, right? So in regards to in regards to that feeling, I'm gonna tell you right now, no one's ever not the man, right? You were just the man on a certain aspect, but you become the man in something else, right? Where have you transitioned that you are G-Peasy? Where are you the man now? Where is that mental shift gone from, like, okay, I was just the man in the field, but now I am the man in something else? Where is it transition to?
Well, it transitioned, it literally, to be honest with you, and I'll tell you the moment where, as soon as I woke up out of my second surgery, because I did a lot of work to get ready for that one. And the moment I woke up in the operating room, and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Parr." And then I just looked at, and the nurses had no clue like what I went through, or what I, for the last couple of decades, let alone the last 4 years. And I looked at them, I said, "I'm back." And they looked at me like, they had no clue. And I'm sitting, as they're moving me, like everything was like beautiful and soft and vivid and crisp and all the colors. And I'm like, they're moving me into another room, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, I'm back." Like I just knew I was back. And that night, I literally, was the first time in 18 years, I literally, not to give you you and your listeners an image here, but I was sitting on the toilet for the first time with my leg bent. It was bent perfectly. I was sitting there, and I'm looking down going, "Oh my gosh, I've never had this." And this is a little thing in life, right? Just like,
like Kill Bill, like you just wiggle your big toe. You feel me?
Exactly, man.
Right, yeah, that was a big
I
moment.
literally, I had the nurse, I'm like, "Can you just sit here with me? And can I stand up real quick and then sit back down?" And she was like, "Yeah." So she was holding my hand, and I'm sitting there going, "Holy smoke." So it was that moment, that day, that night, where I was like, "Man, I'm back." But the thing, the rub was that all those years where I was in pain, and I was frustrated and pissed off, and went through a lot of identity issues, what I was stuck on was that I was like, I just want to be the old Grant. I just want to be the man again. And the thing is that when I reinvented myself, it was like, okay, I'm going to be a new Grant. Like, that Grant was awesome. I'm going to make even a better Grant. So to be honest with you, as far as like being the man and playing a bigger game, the last 5 years has been, my life is nuts. Like,
I love it. That made me inspired. Because, like I said, like I found out, and we'll talk, you find out you are the man. It never stops being the man. You just transition to the next aspect of where you are the man, where totally. Like you focus on it, doing on the field. And that is, you never take away from those glory days. But at some other aspect, you can have the opportunity to be like what you're doing right now. Is you're going to be the man in the sports psychology world. Like you just become the man somewhere else, and it doesn't go away. It just transitions to something else. I think that's the goals transition to something else, but you never stop being the man because that focuses on one identity, which we're not one thing.
No.
So No, that just had me inspired. I love it. Wiggle your big toe or sit on the toilet. When you sit on the
Yeah,
toilet,
right.
when you sit on the toilet, remember there's someone out there that'll just be so happy to at least bend their hips. You know, feel me? Like
Yeah,
that's something we
totally.
take for granted. You know, like, hey, I could bend my hips and sit on this toilet. So so this is the part of the show I call shot for shot. My boy Marty gave me up, where you get to ask me any random question you want. I get to ask you any random question I want, related to the topic or not. Do you want to go first or I go first?
You can go first.
All right. So I always do this randomly. I always think about this when I have my episode. You said, I got actually two part. You did say you got in the flow state at one game. I want to know what that game was like. What's the stats on that game?
So that was my junior year in high school, and the game before I got hurt and I had a cracked tibia, and so I was apparently quote unquote out for the rest of the season. And the night before, I got some work done, and I literally called up my coach and said, I'm walking right now, and I just got done sprinting, and I think I can play tomorrow. And he was like, there's no way. And I go, I really think I can play tomorrow. And he's like, I got to get on the phone with your dad. So that got approved, right? So it was really cool about this. It was kind of a movie in a way, or at least the way I look at it. I didn't even warm up. I was in my civilian clothes. So the other team didn't understand. They knew that I wasn't going to play. Well, right when the game was about to start, I went in and I changed, and I came back out, and I sat on the first quarter. I just sat there and watched the game, and nothing was happening. The game was pretty boring, right? So I went in second quarter, and we started scoring. And I can't necessarily remember my stats per se, but I knew I threw a couple touchdowns. But I'll tell you what, I don't know what it was. It was like a minute and a half, and I remember my brother was on the sideline, and all we needed to do was just score a touchdown and we'd win. And my brother looks at me and he says, "Here it is, dude. This is the moment." He's like, "Don't let this moment define you. Define the moment." So I was sitting there going, yeah, I was like, so I walked out on the field after having a great game so far, and we went 3-and-out. And so I'm kind of pissed because I'm like, dang, I didn't seize the moment. Well, then the other team went 3-and-out. So
they got it again. Oh, yes.
Yeah, we got the ball. It was like 50-something seconds left, and I remember walking out there. It was I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm like dramatizing this at all.
Of course, man. Shoot, we about to. You're making a script right now.
Yeah, right.
Movie, hey,
so
book deal.
I felt like my Rocky song came on, my walk-off song. Like I was walking, I was like, here it is. This is it. I'm gonna make it happen. And I remember calling in the play. Everything seemed controlled. I'm walking to the line of scrimmage, looking left and right. I can go back there right now. Everything was just in slow-mo but controlled, and everything was clear. And I felt like I felt really confident and good, but I also felt like there was this like what's the word? I felt like seething, competing, like venom. Like but it was controlled. And anywho, we got into a situation. It was 3rd down and 25.
Oh Lord, that's not good.
Yeah. So I threw this out pattern, which I threw in triple coverage. And my wide receiver, Abe Nielsen, caught it on the sideline, and they pushed him out in the air. So it was controversial, actually, because if was he in, was he out? And they said he was in. And then, man, it was like the way I walked, everything was just, I'm like, the Rocky song was on, man. Then the next play, man, I looked left, and then I looked right, and I hit Abe again in the cornerback end zone. And there was 35 seconds left on the clock, and we ended up winning.
Oh, awesome.
But everything was just in slow-mo but clear for me. And but it was funny because I thought my moment, the real moment, when it was a minute and a half, it wasn't really then, but I didn't let that moment steer me from my confidence. Like I was still in zone. Right. So.
And then here's my second part, right? We talk about identities, right? And I have one, I know we're not in the video, but I have in my board of visualization is that like over time, I realized that like one thing doesn't define me, you know? So I literally listed out the roles, like quote, unquote, main roles in my life in order of importance. And quite like, so for instance, I can look at it. I have a, a relationship with myself, husband, father, friend, and then my job. like,
Right.
and like, I literally reflect on that all the time. Like when someone introduced themselves to me, I say, yo, what do you do? And I go, I'm a husband and a father of 2 kids. And they're like, I'm just joking. I got it. Like, cause I don't walk around with my job first. That's like not my first thing. Like I literally found myself in being a parent and being a husband. Like, that's where I found my purpose. And then coincidentally, lucky for me, I found my purpose in helping others in a job. But if anything today, if I just had to work for a paycheck, I'd be totally happy because I definitely have a role that fulfills me. So if you can go today, you don't have to do 5. You can just do top 4 or 5. What are your roles in life and how, that one? What are your roles?
My roles, it's a great point because being a mental performance coach, even though I love this, is I was built for this. I love it, but it's what I do. So, and it's not who I am. And so my roles, I mean, obviously I'm a husband, I'm a brother, I'm a musician. I'm a dog owner. Right. And I think also too is energy. I mean, I always go back to energy, man. Like if I want to be anything like a husband, if I want to be a dog owner, I have to take care of my energy, man. Like that's huge. So that's like probably my biggest role is like, and I don't know, a CEO, and I'm going to take this from my mentor, a chief energy officer, right? I got to be my own CEO in that regard.
I love that. That's it. I love it. And I agree. I wrote out all those roles. My supervisor encouraged me to write out my roles in my life because she says, like, when you go out through the day and you make actions, I look at that board and say, who does it affect, right? So, like, if I have to stay late from work, that's taken away from my wife and kids, or if I do this. So it also just helps me prioritize what I'm doing and putting my efforts into. So I list out my roles to keep me grounded and say, Phil, when you're doing all this extra stuff, do this. Like one of the things that she said to me that really shook me one time she's like, you're doing a lot at work, but how does your wife and kids feel? And I said, I work really hard because I'm trying to be the man. And she's like, well, what good is being the man out in the world and the work if you can't be the man at home? I was like, oh God, she hit me in my chest. So I think about that too. Like, it don't matter if I'm stunting on everyone and being the man outside the house if I can't be the man at home. So that's my number one priorities. Like, dang, I was like, my boss hit me in my chest with that one. I was like, oh Lord. This is funny though, because it's very interesting to have a boss that tells you to slow down rather than speed up. So that's why I respect it. So, okay, your question for me.
So I'm going to go deep on you.
All right.
Right. Cause I mean, that's kind of what I do with people, right? I deal with the inside out game here. This is what I do. So, and this is actually a question that I ask all of my guests on my podcast. It's the very last question. So when you reflect on your whole life, your whole career, what do you think you've learned the most about yourself?
Oh, about myself?
Yeah.
Well, I learned, and this is where I'm processing about you're talking about career-wise or life-wise, is that when I focus so much on external rewards to find my purpose, external feedback, then you don't find it. I found, and I call it, you find your purpose in life multiple times. Quite honestly, there's no such thing. It's like a cycle of purposes, but I think the main constant that I found is that when I have devoted to being helpful or kind to someone else, then in that moment, I found my purpose. So for instance, I've literally have received the best positive feedback about my work performance when I stopped focusing on rewards and focused on being the best helper in my job. Then by happenstance, my performance has gone up. And then the other roles, when I focus on helping my wife and kids and I focused on the helping aspect, then I become what people think, oh my goodness, you're such a good dad. I'm like, I really wasn't focusing on trying to get you to think I'm a good dad. I was just trying to help my kids. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think if that's what I'm coming to the conclusion now. If you're looking for external rewards or recognition, that is not going to help you find your purpose. I think if you're looking to find your purpose, focus on how can I help someone else or do good, And then by natural happenstance, because you put your energy into being the best at that, then you become good at something.
Totally. And dude, it's service, man. It's like, that's what I was saying earlier, man. Like you're talking about just being in service. That's where love and joy and magic happens, when you're in service. And I love it, because what you're bringing up, being motivated by external factors. My whole like young life in sports I was so externally focused and motivated. And I think when I started to switch to be more intrinsically motivated, that's when because you're in more control when you're intrinsically motivated. All those external things, like you want to get a scholarship, you want to get that, you want it, whatever, be in the newspaper, you want to get on social media, or have someone say something about you. You can't control any of that stuff. I mean, if you want to get to that, then you have to focus on the process. It's going to drive results to position.
Exactly. I like that.
Right?
So to drive results, you focus on that process. By happenstance, it yields that. Like,
right.
You like start getting recognized. You're like, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just trying to be good at what I was doing.
Right.
You feel me? Like they're like, oh, you're so good at your job. I was like, oh, really? I was just trying to not get fired. I was just trying to do my job. So
right.
That's where I've learned over time, and it's still growing. You know, I ain't gonna lie though, your boy still likes to stun on people and get praise and external words of affirmation is my love language. So, you know, if you say I'm great, you know, I get gassed up. I love it. But
heck yeah, man.
I learned that don't chase words of affirmation. Do your good acts, and maybe they'll naturally come. Maybe if they don't, whatever. Give yourself words of affirmation. You know what I'm saying?
Right, man. Totally. Power of words. So
this has been a great episode. I definitely vibe with you. The energy, I believe in that thing too, because everyone I've talked to that Todd has led my way has shared the same goals and values. It's just been great. But I definitely want the listeners to follow up with you, just get to know you. So the stage is yours. Shout outs and plugs.
Yeah, you can follow me. First, you can just go to my website, gamefaceperformance.com. You can find out all my content there. You can actually find my podcast, 90% Mental, there. You can find 90% Mental on any podcast platform out there. My book, The Next One Up Mindset, is also on my website, and also you can purchase it on Amazon. If you want to follow me on social media, my IG and Twitter handle is GFP Mindset. Follow me at LinkedIn, it's Grant Parr, and on Facebook it is Game Face Performance.
I love it. And then shout outs. Who you trying to shout out?
Man, I got tons of shout outs, man.
Go ahead. I'll let you know.
I just got to share the love. Yeah. First, shout out to my wife, man. She's my biggest fan, and I learn so much from her every day. So shout out to my wife, Nicole. My mentor, Graham Betchart, who's a stud. My boy, that's the Mavericks mental performance coach, Mike Franco. My brother, Trent. Sister, Joelle. My mom. I can't wait to hang out with all of them, actually, in Christmas in a few days. And shout out to all the teams and the athletes that I've worked with, and that they affected my lives and affected their lives.
Excellent. I love that. Well, it's been a pleasure having on your show. You know, never know where our paths will cross again. This is just wonderful stuff. Really motivated. As I said earlier, I could tell all over the phone your energy is in a good spot. I'm starting to believe in that foo-foo stuff, the energy and what people.
Hey, man.
I believe in it. I believe in it. It's real. You know, there's some validity to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You ain't gonna catch me though wearing no robe and doing some Tibetan chants. But I do believe in. I do believe in that. I do believe that people, you know, you vibe with them, and they're very nice people out there in the world, and they definitely lead with being kind, and because of that, they get people to help. You know, they help people. So I definitely get that vibe from you, and I definitely know that we're gonna. Just by putting that energy out, maybe we'll run into each other. You know, I might pop up where you are. I might be all over the world, so you never know. But thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I definitely want to encourage the listeners to follow it with you. And just to kind of wrap up, if you listen to the podcast, Positive Filter on everything. If you have a question for the podcast, hit me up on Positive Filter or call the hotline 571-336-6560. Really thankful for you, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.